Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very senior and accomplished professional from New York, USA, Mr. Akhil Gupta. Akhil, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashutosh.
Akhil is the founder of Universal Enlightenment Forum, and we'll talk about that today. He's the former chairman and senior managing director of the Blackstone Group, and he's an author. And all of you know, I'm very partial to authors. He's an author of a book titled Bridges Across Humanity. So, Akhil, before we speak about the Universal Enlightenment Forum, tell me in your own words, your journey in brief.
Ashutosh, typical Hindu family. My life was duty, devotion, divinity. Went to IIT because my mother took weekly fasting for me. I had no money to go to classes, so I got to IIT and I did chemical engineering and I taught my class there. I don't know how. So I got recruited by Hindustan Unilever as a management training program, which was the most prestigious jobs to get. Again, my luck. And then the only decision I took in my life was to quit Levers and go to Stanford University to do my MBA. I was the first freak to do that. Nobody's ever left that management program. And I had this quest to learn, to sit with the most accomplished and the best universities. So that took me to Stanford. I got a job in Washington, D.C. And then Mukesh Ambani, who was my classmate in business school, invited me to India. I was supposed to be 6 months, 2 years. I ended up staying with him for 12 years. And then I quit when the father died, Dhirubhai died, the brother started a fight, I quit. And luckily, again, stroke of luck, I got the job at Blackstone. And that's where, I had all between Reliance and Blackstone, had all the enchantment on mammon, money, fame, power. And yet I felt something was lacking. So I decided to quit and then came to Harvard for the advanced leadership program. And it's a program which is designed to help, accomplished professionals to devote their lives to social causes. They help you transition. And one of the most beautiful things is you're allowed to take classes anywhere you want. And I audited 36 classes, and that's how I started my foundation. So my foundation has two objectives. One is human flourishing. And this goes back to Derek Boak, Harvard president, who said, we have quintupled our GDP, but we have not flourishing as much as we should. And so that was one subject that I wanted to do. And then I learned, pardon my ignorance, at Kennedy School when I took a class, that one third of Germany was wiped out before the Westphalian Agreement by fighting between the two factions of Christianity, which is Protestants and Catholics. And my background was on my 10th birthday, my mom took me to feed the poor of all religions. Forget about the same, all religions. So I was very curious, what's in Christianity and what's in Islam that makes people sort of behave the way they do, while the prophets have preached only mercy and love and all that stuff. So that's how I started to learn, take classes in all the religions. And, the dots started to connect and I got insights on both why we are not flourishing and what's the cause of so much of cruelty and because of religions. So I wrote the book. It took me 5 years to write the book, to research. It's a very unique kind of a book because there are wonderful books that exist on multiple religions, but they're on silos. I wanted to write a book that has take one theme at a time and then show it all exists in all religions, that theme. What that does is it takes the reader, reside in different religions for a period of time and come back and again. Has a very different impact. So now we are sending weekly letters to almost 350,000 people. We have a 20% opening rate. So 70,000 people are opening that email. And most people are shocked that there's so many commonalities. And when they think about it, they say, oh, it's so obvious. Of course, we should have all those commonalities. So that's my mission, to make people aware, right? Bring awareness. That's
fascinating. Thank you.
And I was sitting in the Harvard Divinity School last year. I spent another year at Harvard.
Mm.
And the whole building has been renovated.
Mm.
It's a beautiful lounge. So I used to spend all my time there whenever I was free.
Mm.
So 3 professors came. Are you Akhil Gupta? Yes. Oh, we are getting your newsletters. We really love it. Keep it up. It's a great job.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, Akhil, let's talk a little bit about the Universal Enlightenment Forum now. What was the primary inspiration behind founding UEF?
So as I mentioned, that inspiration to me was initially when I went to Harvard, it was like, okay, fine. Like I remember what Aldous Huxley said, that there comes a time when one asks even of Shakespeare or even of Beethoven, is this all? And I'm neither Shakespeare nor Beethoven, but for a kid who grew up in Chandni Chowk, Parathe Wali Gali, to be able to get the kind of exposure that I got is nothing short of a miracle.
Absolutely.
Yet, as I used to live with Mukesh Ambani for 12 years, and with Blackstone, again, I had a very high lifestyle, socially high lifestyle, but I felt a sense of lack. And that's why I went to Harvard to figure out what's the meaning of life. As I was trying to figure that out, that's where it came to me that, the two things that came to me very clearly. One is the solution to the problem that I was observing, but more importantly, the mechanism as to why the problems are happening. And it's happening because that we are living a very compulsive life. There's so many false narratives that exist in the society that we're not aware of it. And if we are aware of these false narratives and we become conscious, then some of these or most of these problems can be solved. And as I started writing a book on human flourishing, and then once I was with my grandniece in Austin, and my daughter-in-law said, "Mamu, can you look after this 9-month-old baby as I cook for you?" And obviously, she was showing off how good a cook she is. So I was playing with the child, and after 2 days, and I was doing my experiment, by the way, in psychology. Most of the insights you got by experimenting on baboons or on children. So here's my child, I'm experimenting on her, and I found that after 2 days, it's just an epiphany. All she wants to do is to love, learn, and play.
Correct.
So my God, that's exactly intuitively I've been coming to that meaning of life. I took so many courses. I took all religion, all philosophy. And my conclusion was, there is you can never find what the capital truth is, right? But we all settle for some beliefs and we call them as truth, capital truth. And so when I came to the conclusion that I cannot find the capital truth, then how do I find meaning in life? That's where I came to the conclusion. I'm really practicing that you don't have to find the truth. You don't have to believe in anything, or you can believe in anything. Just lead your life through love, learn, and play, meaning that whatever you do, make sure you do it with as a loving person, as a person who's learning from everything that happens, and obviously being very playful.
Very interesting.
And as I started to dig into psychology and philosophy, going back to my lessons, it became so much more clear that this is a very unique insight. And if you look at all religions and all wisdom traditions, they talk about love.
Correct.
Some of them also talk about learning, but not a single wisdom tradition talks about love, learn, and play.
Absolutely.
So if you have to lead an exuberant life, right? I want to live a simple life, but my simple life is also very exuberant. And the exuberant is I bring playfulness in everything. If I see a stranger passing by, I say something, make the person laugh.
But Akhil, you've spoken about a lot about the positives about all the religions, and I completely agree with you. But tell me, what are some misconceptions about religious commonalities that you are addressing through UEF?
So, what you find is there's a nice chapter on my book called The Prophets and the Priests. And so there are two things that we are addressing. One is when the prophet says something, the priest, like for example, take every religion, there's a split. There's a split in Islam, right? The three, Sunni, Shia, and Sufis, right? Buddhism, there's a Theravada and whatever, the Mahayana and so many other sects.
Yeah.
Look at Protestants, there are like thousands of them.
Correct.
These happen not because of different in philosophy. It happens because of politics. So wherever there's politics, there's conflicts. So it's not religion; it's the use of religion by the politicians, right? That create the conflict. Second reason, and that's again what we are trying to bring out, is that imagine these religions were 2,000 years back. So if you look at the content of these religions with the context, people were not educated, right? In fact, Christ said that to you, I give you a certain way, for the masses, I have to give in stories. Buddha said the same thing, to you, I give you certain ways, but for the masses, we have to tell in parables, right? So what happens is those parables, the stories were taken from that context. Now the context has changed so dramatically. We start to still interpret these very literally, right? So the moment you start to interpret this metaphorically rather than literally, you start to see amazing commonalities. And that's what we want to educate. It's a very simple transformation from one literal interpretation to the other. I'll give you an example. There is a phrase by, I took 2 classes on Islam with Ali Hassan professor. It's amazing how you see how the words of the prophets are some of the words most full of love. For example, he says, if you kill one innocent person, you're as if you're killing the whole humanity. Tell me how much more humane can you be, the message. Another thing he says, the voice of Allah is coming from synagogues and churches and what's the other thing? Church, synagogue, and mosques, right? Now, in the area where he used to live, there's no Hindu temples, right? So obviously he will say only about those 3 ones.
Sure.
Imagine there was a Hindu temple, he'll also say a Hindu temple.
Absolutely.
More important, when he say Allah, that Allah is not the Allah of Muslims, that Allah is basically translation of God. He said the voice. Christians are not shouting Allah, they're shouting Christ or whatever.
Correct.
Right? So the moment you see the spirit behind this stuff, you start to see that all the religions are actually conveying love and
absolutely.
Same thing.
But Akhil, let me ask you another question then, and when I was reading and preparing for my conversation with you, you also talk about UEF integrating ancient wisdom with modern science.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about how you are doing this.
So, the way I approach it is, I think that religion, philosophy, and science, they're the children of what I call spirituality. What is spirituality? Spirituality means there's more to reality than what is visible to us. Take, for example, a wood. Physics has proved that wood looks solid to us, but it's 99.5% empty. So we know that reality is presented to us in a very gross way. We have very limited cognitive apparatus through which we see the reality. So spirituality to me means that we want to see things as they are. We want to see what is our relationship with the cosmos. And one of the big problems of reality is that we see that we are separate from each other, but we are so deeply interconnected. And that's what religion wants to bring out, that you're deeply interconnected. Now, physics tells you that my electron wasn't your electron, and your electron, we are sharing so many things, so deeply interconnected. Even if you spend 5 minutes with your awareness to see how interconnected we are in every sense of the word, then I think some of our illusions about how our existence is can go away. And I'm a firm believer that if we really see interconnectedness seriously, right, then we can really benefit personally. For example, if there's some loneliness is like a big problem in America. Is because we believe that we have a separate existence, right? But if you believe like that we exist obviously we have individuality, but we are part of the whole world, then those feelings of, loneliness can disappear. So what we do is, we are not doing our research ourselves, except few insights that I got when I was doing studies at Harvard. But there's a Harvard Flourishing program at, there's a human flourishing program at Harvard. And he is actually tasked, that's Tyler Vanderbilt runs that. And he's studying the effects of spiritual practices on day-to-day life. Like, what happens if you practice on blood pressure, or when you do meditation. Harvard has done the studies on meditation, how your brains get transformed in 12 weeks of meditation, and so on. So yoga is the same thing.
Yeah.
So we don't do research ourselves, but we bring, so I read a lot, and I'm doing this job on behalf of the reader, that I bring what, like, in the shortest possible time, the reader can the maximum benefit on a particular insight. And this is driven inspiration by what I thought the professors, when I took 36 classes, the biggest role that professors played was curating the content, because there's so much in the world now.
Very true.
You don't have time to read all that stuff. So somebody, if they pick up, okay, this article, there was 100 other articles, they're doing us the most service. So I think the service that UF can do is to bring out, the best that is there. And, we have people reading. I have few students who are actually working with me from Harvard and Stanford, and one in local New York University and all that stuff. And I've tasked them to say, hey, look, every time you just go through this, immerse yourself on the missions of UEF, and when you see something interesting, send it to me. Very exciting, my professor in divinity school, Frank Clooney, he is a Jesuit priest. He conducts masses on Sunday, and he teaches 7 courses in Hinduism. Imagine what a unique he is.
Amazing. So, Akhil, I've got one more question to ask you for UEF, then I want to move to your book. What are your thoughts on the role of using technology? And you've been speaking of human flourishing. What are your thoughts on the role of technology in enhancing human flourishing and religious literacy?
Yeah, so I think just look at what we are doing right now. Because of technology,
we're having the conversation.
Messages will be, I don't know how many viewers you have, be going to so many viewers.
Absolutely.
Right? Without technology, let me tell you, I wouldn't have been able to write my book. I had a Google Doc in which the person was helping me research, and I was collaborating constantly, right, on creating this book. And by the way, let me tell you the wonders of technology. When we wrote this book, we had 54 common themes in the book. There were 5 or 6 themes that he didn't write, but I thought because he was busy, he had another job, so he wanted to go and take up that job. But he had honorable, he had promised till he finished the book he won't. So he was ready to go. So when ChatGPT came in, I said, oh, let me try to see if ChatGPT has something for me. And guess now, instead of 54, now we have 100 themes.
Absolutely.
I'll give you an example of kneeling. I said kneeling, he didn't find anything. So, and I went to the church, and, with a friend, last May, and kneeling with my friend. I said, oh, my, namaz, kneeling in namaz, there's kneeling in temple, there must be commonality. And here I go and ask ChatGPT in Bird, and I was able to write an article on kneeling in one hour's time. So that's the wonders of.
Absolutely. Well said. So I'm going to move. Sorry, go ahead.
No, technology to me is how you use it. I mean, I'm all for technology. We should keep on making the progress, but you should have guardrails in terms of misuse of technology.
Correct. Great response. Thank you. I'm going to now move to your book, Akhil, Bridges Across Humanity. And you just said it took you 5 years and a lot of research to do this book, write this book. How does your book differ from other books on world religions?
Okay. So as I mentioned, the first is that I started reading all the wonderful books on world religions, and the best one is by Houston Smith. He was also at Harvard. And is the best book on religion, anyone who wants to read in detail. The difference is, so I should give you an anecdote.
Mhm.
So when I had Alan Simon, who helped me research and write, he just graduated from Harvard Divinity School.
Mm.
And I said, hey, I want to write a book on commonalities of religions.
Mm.
I'm not interested in that. There's so many comparative books on comparative religion,
Mm.
but I need a job. So I'll give you my 3 months of my time because I need the money.
Mm.
So I said, okay, go and buy all the books on comparative religion, highlight the relevant portion for me, and make a summary.
Mm.
And let's review every 2 weeks. So I was in New York, but I used to go to. We had an office at Harvard in Massachusetts Avenue. So every week I used to go there. On the first review, he gave me some stuff, which was good. Second review said, oh my God, the book that you're trying to write doesn't exist. I've searched everywhere. And I want to commit myself to this one. And after 1 year, he said, I don't want to do anything other than just writing this book. It's so much of learning and so much of, as I'm writing and researching, I'm also learning, and it's personal growth for me. So the difference, as I mentioned before, is that firstly, we take one theme at a time and show how it exists in all religions. The impact is that you're making the reader reside in different religions, which I mentioned before.
Yeah.
Other thing is that the religion is practiced in particularity. You can't practice religion in commonality. You have to practice particularity, right? Academia is all teaching in particularity. In fact, if you see the trend, there's a decline in comparative religions across academia. There used to be a lot more comparative courses, but they don't exist now. It's very simple. It's easy for someone to become an expert in one subject and teach that subject forever. It takes little effort. So you can see all the incentives are towards particularities, right? So for us, what is very important, and this is something that concept came to me. I was meeting. This was 2017. I met Alan Garber, who's now the acting president. He was the provost then, and he was also from Stanford. So we had a good rapport with each other. We spent almost an hour together. And he said, Akhil, we are trying to create T individuals. T means the vertical T is that you are deep in one subject, but we want the horizontal line, that is, you are familiar with all the subjects. So I send him my book and I say, hey, Alan, you remember you told me this stuff? He said, Akhil, that's exactly right. So the purpose of this book is to create the T individuals. We want to reduce the particularity. I think everybody should practice the particularity. Have firstly, Frank Clooney, who I was talking about, he says, I'm a better Christian because I've read everything about Hinduism. So I think that's what people will find, that if they read about other religions, imagine if you believe in something and say 5 other religions believe in the same thing, right? You get a conviction. And then we also bringing science into the picture, that how meditation is there in all religions. But by the way, look at studies in Harvard and Stanford. They're also telling you that meditation is very beneficial. The impact on people is very, very different.
Very interesting.
So that's the second thing we really want is that, the exclusive mindset that we have, oh, this exists only in our religion, that is the illiteracy that we want to overcome. And the last thing is basically, I think if we can start making people see the religion has been, our primary expression of meaning making. We're trying to make meaning in this world. And I must share this, my most powerful analogy is the elephant and the 9 blind men. And to me, that's the most important thing, that, everybody sees a reality, right? But they only see a partial reality. Each of the reality is true, right? But imagine that if like somebody sees, okay, he sees the leg and say elephant is like a tree trunk. Another one sees a rope, say it's like a snake.
Yeah.
And some see the trunk and say it's something else. And see the ears and say it's a fan. And they believe in it, and they're prepared to die for their beliefs. Imagine if we were to together share what we have learned about the elephant. each one of us have an infinitely better picture of what the elephant is.
Very
And
interesting.
the same thing about reality. The reality is so vast
Mm.
that for any particular, sort of religion and person to grasp is impossible. Look
Very
at the
well said.
wonder of science and technology.
Mm.
All knowledge has come from this 2.5-pound brain,
Correct.
but not on one brain, by the way.
Mm.
It has come from millions of brains and
Absolutely.
over a period of time.
Great
So if you
response.
create that parallel, right,
Mm.
by understanding what each religion is teaching us with an open mind, no pride of ownership, no superiority, inferiority complex, we can create a wonderful world.
Fascinating. Akhil, I have time for one more question, and therefore I'm going to ask you this one question, which is, as you look ahead, what do you hope will be the long-term impact of UEF and your book, Bridges Across Humanity on Society?
So I think the most important, I believe in simplicity. You have to
Mm.
be, the simpler you are, the more powerful your message is going to be.
Mm.
So that's why we came out with this love, learn, and play.
Mm.
So this framework to me is as simple as it is profound.
Mm.
And the advantage is this is not a bottoms up or bottoms down and top up. What's that called?
Bottoms up, top down.
Bottoms up, top down
Mm.
framework. It's an inside out framework,
Mm.
right? We all know how to love from inside. We all know how to play from inside. We all know how to learn.
Mm.
If a child, all of us have children, we get tired of saying, but why?
Yeah.
And you give them an answer, but why?
Mm.
And then you give it, but why? So loving is so innate to us.
Mm.
So we want to spread this simple framework saying, yeah, you can keep exploring. I keep reading all the time, knowing fully well I'll never know the truth, but it's fun. Learning is fun.
Yeah.
So learning for the sake of learning is great fun.
Mm.
So one is that love, learn, and play framework is so important for us.
Yeah.
So we want to spread that word around. And second thing we want to do is just make people realize that living consciously rather than compulsively. And there's a time, I'll give you a very nice story. There's a Peter Wallace, I think Peter Wallace. No, John Foster Wallace. He was giving commencement speech, and the speech went like, there were two boy fish swimming in the ocean. The mama fish goes the other way and say, hey boys, how's the water? So they swim for another 15 seconds, and the one boy asks the other boy, hey, what's water? Such a powerful analogy that there's so much of false narratives in which we're not aware of. So we just want to make people aware of the false narrative. You don't know, lecture them. We don't know, judge them. We just want them to say, hey, find out for yourself. When you say, I want this, is it that you want it, or is it your advertisement that's making you want it? Is it the comparison with somebody else that's making you want that? Because the moment you start being yourself, I think we are made unique by nature, God, whatever you want to call it. Every one of us has unique biometrics. And to find out what is my unique role in life and play that and be content, and enjoy with love, learn, and play.
What a great response. Akhil, on that note, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your own amazing journey. Thank you for talking to me about the Universal Enlightenment Forum and about this key message of love, learn, and play. I think it is such a powerful message that you are taking out to the world. And these three words are embodied in every single religion of the world. And you just said so. Thank you also for speaking to me about your book, Bridges Across Humanity. I loved what you told me about the T individual, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers and listeners will take away this T individual that they have learned from you. Thank you again, and good luck to you.
Thank you, Ashutosh, for helping me spread this message.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.